If you're building on large language models in Azure, you've hit two names that sound like they overlap: Azure AI Foundry's model catalog and Azure OpenAI Service. They are not the same thing, and picking the wrong entry point costs you inflexibility, throughput, and money. In the next 5 minutes, I'll show you exactly what each one is, what models you get, how deployment and pricing differ, and a crisp rule for when to reach for which. Let's clear up the confusion, because Microsoft keeps reshaping this boundary. Azure OpenAI Service is a managed offering for OpenAI's own models, the GPT-4o family, the O-series reasoning models, embeddings, and image models, sold and hosted by Microsoft with enterprise networking and content filtering. Azure AI Foundry is the broader platform, and its model catalog lists thousands of models: OpenAI, Meta Llama, Mistral, Cohere, plus open-weight models from Hugging Face. Crucially, Azure OpenAI models now live inside Foundry too. So think of Foundry as the superset platform, and Azure OpenAI as one first-party model family you can reach through it or directly. Here's the first real trade-off: breadth. Azure OpenAI gives you a curated, deeply supported set of OpenAI models with consistent APIs and strong tooling. You get predictable behavior, but you're tied to one vendor's roadmap. The Foundry catalog opens the door to open-weight and competitor models. Need a smaller Llama or Mistral model you can fine-tune cheaply, a Cohere re-ranker for search, or an open model you can host yourself for data residency reasons? That's catalog territory. The cost is heterogeneity, API shapes, fine-tuning support, and regional availability vary model to model. Deployment is where the architectural difference bites. Azure OpenAI models offer standard pay-as-you-go, plus provisioned throughput units, PTU, for reserved, low-latency capacity and global or data zone routing options. The Foundry catalog splits into two patterns: serverless API deployments, also called models as a service, bill per token with no infrastructure to manage, and managed compute deployments, where you spin up dedicated GPU virtual machines to host an open model yourself. Managed compute gives you control and isolation, but you pay for the VM whether it's busy or idle, and you own the scaling. On cost, the rule of thumb is simple: token-based pricing, whether Azure OpenAI Standard or Foundry serverless, scales with usage and is great until you hit steady, high volume. At that point, reserved capacity wins, provisioned throughput for OpenAI models, or dedicated managed compute for open models. Both flatten cost and tame latency. Operationally, first-party and serverless options carry almost no ops burden. Managed compute is the heavy one. You're choosing VM sizes, watching GPU utilization, and paying for idle time. Always check current Azure pricing and region availability, because rates, model versions, and PTU minimums change often. In practice, the developer experience converges. Azure OpenAI models still expose the familiar OpenAI style client, while Foundry serverless models use the Azure AI Inference SDK against an endpoint and key from your deployment. Same shape, pick a model name, send messages, get a completion. What changes is the endpoint you target and where the deployment lives. That means you can prototype against an OpenAI model and later swap to an open-weight catalog model behind the same inference client, with minimal code churn. Abstract the client early, and switching vendors becomes a configuration change, not a rewrite. So when do you reach for which? Default to Azure OpenAI Service when you want best-in-class proprietary models, the least operational overhead, and predictable enterprise support, and you're comfortable on OpenAI's roadmap. Reach into the broader Foundry catalog when you need model choice, open-weight models for data residency or self-hosting, cheaper fine-tuning on smaller models, specialized models like re-rankers, or you're benchmarking several vendors before committing. And honestly, most teams use both through Foundry: one project, multiple deployments, routing each workload to the model that fits. That's an opinion, but it's where serious multi-model architectures are landing. To recap, Azure OpenAI Service is the curated, low-ops home for OpenAI's own models with standard and provisioned throughput options. The Foundry model catalog is the wider platform, adding open-weight and third-party models through serverless or managed compute deployments, creating consistency for choice. Cost follows usage until volume justifies reserved capacity, and managed compute is the only option with heavy ops. Your concrete next step: build against the unified Azure AI Inference client so model choice stays a config value. Then start in Foundry where both worlds live side by side. And recheck pricing and model availability in the Azure docs before you commit. If this helped, do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. See you in the next video.